Welcome to our next to last World Cup date, July 5th, getting ready for the World Cup final on Sunday, July 7th. 11 a.m., United States and the Netherlands. One team that is not a surprise to be in the final. The other that I think is. I think some have tried to spin it that they're not, but nobody expected the Dutch to come out of that side of the bracket, maybe except for the Dutch. The Germans were the team that most people expected to be facing the U.S. at this stage. But we'll get into everything related to the final and what each team needs to do to win and things to look for and all that here in just a bit. It's Jason Longshore, Jessica Sharman with you today. And we've got to start with Gianni Infantino, the president of FIFA, and the comments he made today. You generally get the president of FIFA talking about the tournament towards the end and talking about the success of the tournament or things that happened in it and et cetera. It was good to see Gianni Infantino talk about how this tournament needs to grow. And he talked about a couple different ways for it. One, actually more teams, and two, more money involved. And we were having the conversation before we got started. This is a good and a bad thing, and it might take a minute for it to get past being a bad thing to be a good thing. It's a little complicated, Jess.
Yeah, it is. It's one of those things where it's very exciting that FIFA realizes the potential that this tournament has and wants to kind of grow it in the same way that the men's tournament has grown in a way to show the equality between the male and female game. But there are some concerns with that. One of the things that everyone that I've talked to about this World Cup that people have loved is the fact that it's been so close in the majority of the games. As we, there's been a few anomalies in terms of games. You look at the Thailand-USA game, but bar a few, these games have all been so close and the quality has been so good that my one immediate concern when I read these sort of plans for progression is the concern that should this happen in 4 years' time, some of the nations that would then qualify based on the expansion may not have the same talent and resources in their national team to keep the tournament as equal as it's been this year.
Yeah, it's definitely something to worry about. When you look back at the qualification, and we talked about Asia, for example, because of that Thailand score. Thailand wasn't even the last team in Asia to get in. It was South Korea, who didn't look that great in this tournament either. North Korea, I believe, would have been next out of Asia. You look at CONCACAF, and the two countries who were probably next in line were Mexico and Costa Rica, two countries who have been in the World Cup before, and Mexico's been competitive, so that one would have been okay. CONMEBOL, Colombia is one that has been there before and made the knockout round before. They didn't get in this time. There's not a lot more past a few that missed out, and you look at the expansion of the tournament as a whole. I mean, it started with 12 in 91, went to 16 when it came to the United States in 99, 24 just last tournament in Canada in 2015. I feel like 2 tournaments at 24 and then jumping is too fast.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Yeah, I think you need 4 more years of growth, keeping it at the same level it is right now, because in 4 years' time, things are going to be even closer. That's what every team that's been knocked out of the tournament so far has been saying, that in 4 years' time, things are going to be different. And I couldn't agree more. As the domestic leagues start to invest, there's more money being pushed in, more players are staying in their home countries because they see a level of professionalism there. It's going to be an exciting tournament in 4 years' time if it stays the way that it is. My fear is that expanding things too quickly could be detrimental to how the tournament appears in 4 years' time.
Yeah, I think you can do one more tournament at this stage and go ahead and announce that it's going to expand for 2027. There's talk about the hosting of the next tournament as well, because that's not finalized yet. And this is something that does not need to be the case. I mean, we already know the next 2 tournaments on the men's side, the women's side, should be about the same timeline. And this is a prime example and a perfect time to do it. So you go ahead and you get your finalized 2023 host, and I believe Japan, I want to say South Korea is involved in trying to get it, in Australia. So it's probably going to be in Asia. 2027, maybe it's just optimistic talk here in the United States that the U.S. would be in the running for that. It'd be a good bit after 99. 99 was incredibly successful. If you want to expand it and bring it to the U.S. in 27 off the heels of a Men's World Cup in 26, that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, that would be a good branding package. The sort of growth of soccer in America has been huge on the men's side in terms of MLS and the popularity that's gained. We're hoping that the NWSL can do the same in terms of popularity, and it would almost be, I don't want to say like a symbol of equality, but it would be kind of cool to have the two tournaments in the same location back to back. And I feel like the US would have had some practice hosting in the men's tournament, because it's not easy to host a tournament on this scale. We've seen some issues in France. We saw issues in Russia in terms of ticketing and all that stuff. It would kind of be nice to have it in the US again so that it could be sort of the polished result.
Yeah, and both would be expanded tournaments, which is kind of interesting. FIFA could really, I think, do a lot with that. There's actually 10 countries that have confirmed they'll bid for 23, and Australia is one, Japan is one, South Korea is one, and they might actually do a joint bid with North Korea, which would be fascinating. Argentina is one that has been mentioned. Bolivia, which feels like an incredible long shot. Brazil, Colombia, and New Zealand, and South Africa are the other countries that have expressed an interest in bidding. I don't know where the process is, if they've submitted bids, if they needed to submit bids. It looks like it'll be March of 2020 when we get an announcement on the next Women's World Cup.
Those are some fascinating venues, right, Jason?
What's that?
Those are some fascinating host cities.
Yeah, a World Cup in Bolivia at altitude would be...
I can't see that happening.
Insane.
I think Bolivia might have their first shot at a Women's World Cup if it was in Bolivia.
Yes, Bolivia would be the favorite going into that with the crazy altitude change. The other big thing from Gianni Infantino's conversation today is that he wants to double the national team funding and payments to teams that release players for the Women's World Cup. When players make a Men's World Cup squad, there's a FIFA payment that goes to the club that they're from. It's kind of like a solidarity payment type of situation. They want to increase that on the women's side. They want to increase the prize money. And Infantino said, we don't need all this money in the Swiss banks. The Swiss banks have enough money.
Hey, we'll take comments like that. I like those kind of outlooks. And we've seen that money has been a huge difference between the men and female game, the money for the players, the money for the teams, the support system. So with it coming from FIFA, we have to take it with a pinch of salt and see if they're just saying that for the press or saying that because they truly mean it. But I know that none of the club teams or none of the players would be complaining with the chance of more prize money and more money for the teams releasing players.
Yeah, 100%. Prize money at this World Cup is $30 million compared to $400 million at the 2018 Men's World Cup. It's a little out of whack. Slightly.
Yeah, just a little bit of gender disparity there. And when you see the numbers of the viewing figures and the television statistics and the media following, you have to wonder what warranty like that there is in those sort of disparities.
Yeah, and that's where you can't really justify this stuff anymore. You're going to have to then now use these numbers that you're seeing in terms of record ratings all over the world, comparing it to last summer's Men's World Cup, comparing it to Champions League ratings, all of it. Now you're going to have to use those to go out, and in the next round of TV rights fees, they should be gigantic. They should be huge numbers coming in, and then you can increase this. It should have been increased already, but the justification for the numbers now, there's no ignoring more money.
There's absolutely no ignoring the fact that people were paying more attention to this World Cup than ever before on crazy numbers. And for that reason, there should be bidding wars all over the world between different TV channels because everyone wants the Women's World Cup on television based on these numbers.
Yeah, I agree. I think you should have a lot of networks battling it out to get these because now you have results, and now you have something to point to. And maybe that helped a little bit with the NWSL, getting the rest of their season on national TV on ESPN2 and ESPN News. And I believe it's 14 national broadcasts, including the playoffs. Things are heading in the right direction. It's been a great tournament, and I think we'll probably do a recap of the tournament as a whole and legacy, and we'll get into all that and get Kelly involved as well. But there's a final to talk about. There's a third-place match to talk about as well, but I don't know how much you actually want to get into that.
Gosh, I'm not sure how I feel about a bronze medal, but look, we'll take it. It will be nice to emulate our success from 2015. It isn't where England wants to be, and it isn't guaranteed, that's for sure. Sweden showed a lot of presence in their semi-final. They showed a lot of strengths. Potentially, they lost one of their best players through an injury in extra time. They have had a long battle going the full 120. England had a long battle over 90 with the US. So I think the third place game is going to be a close one. I hope it's a strong game, and I'm sure that Neville will probably do a great deal of squad rotation potentially, but it would be nice to finish a tournament at least with some silverware, because that fourth place spot has to be the most painful in tournament football.
Yeah, that's about as bad as it gets. Usually the third place game is either very entertaining because teams are loose and you get a lot of fresh players who are out there trying to make an impression, or it's just boring between two teams who don't really want to be there. I think this one will be somewhat entertaining. I think it'll be a good one. I think there's some subplots too. I mean, Ellen White has a chance at the Golden Boot. You would think she'll get that opportunity. She'll get to play because of that. I hope so anyway.
I hope so. And did you listen? She had some great comments after the game about what this tournament meant to her and how, Steph Horton certainly isn't to blame for anything. And I would like her to she is 30 years old now. You wonder whether she's got another tournament in her. You hope so. But she deserves a chance to really shine on this stage, considering that she's been a popular player throughout the US and England. I was really impressed with some of the comments in US media about her and on social media, because she carries herself fantastically. And I think it would be good for someone to challenge for that Golden Boot, because we're used to it going to a USA player, particularly when they start the tournament 13-0 up.
Yeah, and it's not a guarantee that it ends up there. And we were talking about the Golden Ball Award as well. We've talked about it a couple times here on this show, and we were talking about it on Soccer Down here this morning. There's not a clear-cut contender, I think, for it. A lot of times it does become an attacking player. A lot of times the Golden Boot winner is under consideration for Golden Ball. I don't know if that'll be the case.
Is there a Golden Glove?
There is.
Okay. But that just goes to the goalkeeper that conceded the least goals, or just a goalkeeper that has a fantastic performance?
It's more like Golden Ball. It's more of a vote of the best goalkeeper in the tournament.
Okay, that will be an interesting one too, because as much as some of the best goalkeepers haven't made it out the groups, there's still been some fantastic displays. And I say, if Nea has a good game, she's in the running for that.
I think she has to be, yeah. And I think if you look at the goalkeepers who were eliminated earlier, Endler would be one, Correa would be one that would probably be mentioned in that. There's a couple of wild cards. That's why this tournament's been so interesting, because those types of awards, like a best 11 for the tournament, these things aren't cut and dried because there's been so many good performances. It's been more even than we usually get. And again,
it's just a real credit to the tournament and the sort of growth of all the other teams, that it's not set in stone. And it could just take a really good performance in the final for someone to sort of swing that vote, or even the third place game, because there's players across the four teams that made it to the semi-finals that all deserve some recognition. So it's always fun when it's not predictable, and we'll be excited to see who sort of owns that performance over the weekend.
Yeah, that third place game could actually go a long way in deciding more than just Golden Boot. You're right. It could be one of those tournaments where if there is a star turn in the final, that player, it's their tournament. And that's what we remember down the road. Could be a player in the United States, like a Megan Rapinoe, if she is ready to go. All the signs are sounding good out of Team USA camp when it comes to her hamstring. It's been kind of quiet on Rose Lavelle's hamstring. Those are the two injury concerns for the U.S. That they has depth, and we saw them, be able to get through without Rapinoe in the semi, and then Lavelle came off in the midway point in the second half. But let's say that you're missing one or both of them. How much of a concern would that be for you?
I think the US has so much depth, and they showed that against England. That I tell you, I said it after the game. I don't think they missed Rapinoe. I actually think Pugh came in and did a fantastic job, and Lavelle had played well. And if you base it on performance in the tournament, Lavelle's had one or two quiet games, but she's also been one of the best players in terms of ball control and passing possession play that we've seen. So I actually think Lavelle would be harder to replace than potentially Rapinoe. And I think Pugh sort of put that question in Ellis's mind that even if Rapinoe was fit, would she start the game?
Yeah. Kristen Press had a good day. Gets the opening goal, and it's such an interesting situation with that because Rapinoe has been the poster child for this team for so much of this tournament, both on and off the field. But I'm kind of with you. Your team is different with her, and we've talked a lot about it coming into that England game, which we wasted all of our time thinking she would play and how you deal with England attacking down that side. But she's such an important player, but you do have to accommodate her a little bit in the team because she's not going to track back and defend as much. She doesn't have the legs to do that because then you take away what she gives you in the attacking phase. Press has that, so you can play a little more, I guess, a normal type of structure with Press, but I'm with you on Lavelle, and I'm surprised that that's where we're at this stage because I thought coming in, Sam Mewis had to play, and Lindsey Horan had to play, and they had to pair with Ertz as the midfield trio. Lavelle has been the wild card so often for the United States and the one who's breaking things down. Without her, I do worry a little bit about chance creation.
Yeah, she's been very creative and unpredictable. And I think a lot of people that were playing against the US was probably thinking like you, Jason, and they weren't planning to play against Lavelle. And that's kind of where she's the unknown, which makes it harder to prep against. You know what you're getting with certain players on the field, but with Lavelle, when she has a good day, she's absolutely cracking and impossible to really close down and read her mind. She can put in passes that you don't expect a player to be able to make, and that's where her creativity is top notch. I agree with you. I think Rapinoe maybe plays because she is that voice within the team on and off the field. You've seen, I don't want to call it controversy because I don't think it is. I think it's all a very one-sided foolery. But when it comes to Rapinoe, her team have really rallied behind her, and it's that sort of character that sort of embodies the U.S. women's national team spirit. So maybe that's something they want to include her in because her team gets behind her and she's a leader on and off the field. But like I say, I don't think they missed her against England. And I think I said it afterwards, it actually would have probably been better for England playing against Rapinoe because she's that much more predictable and she does leave those gaps at the back. And against a team like the Netherlands that has three up top and is so confident going forward, that's when you need your midfielders tracking back to get bodies behind the ball.
Yeah, that's what's going to be different for the U.S. against the Netherlands, and that's why I'm maybe a little more worried than the traditional folks out there who think that this is going to be a comfortable win for the U.S. I don't think so. I think that front three and the midfield as well with Groningen, Van de Donk, and Spitze, this is a really talented technical team going forward, and they might be the ones to give the U.S. defense its biggest challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. When they play a formation a little bit more different to England produced challenges, but we saw that we didn't overload at the back as much as we would have done if Paris had been on that right side. And I think the Netherlands, as long as they play their game and they don't go into it with a sort of Sweden Olympics mentality of parking the bus, if they go out and challenge with three up top and three very strong players up top, it could panic the US. We saw against England, there were a couple of splitting passes that the US centre-backs couldn't deal with. There were some big gaps between the defence and the midfield, and that could be where the US sees some concerns. I think the Netherlands might be a bit worried. Was it Martins that went off injured at halftime for Holland?
It was... Martins did come off. Let me see if it was halftime. I thought it was a little bit later than that, but you might be right. She'd had a toe issue for a long part of the tournament. Yeah, it was at halftime. You're correct. Jill Roord came in, which is a good substitute for them to have. She's been dangerous in this tournament as well. Martins, though, It's been a little bit of a quiet tournament for her, but
she
she's
has,
so
but
important.
it's about when she gets hot, and you never know what better place to get hot than a tournament final. And if she's back in and she can perform to the best of her ability, I mean, she was FIFA 2017 Female Player of the Year, from what I remember. So she has potential. She has a lot of threat, but if she's missing, I think the Netherlands, even if she hasn't been having the best tournament, it's psychologically a big deal to be missing one of your strong players, as we saw with Rapinoe against England. A lot of the fans, when they saw that she was missing, were already disheartened by it, and I can see a similar thing being for the Netherlands.
What is your thoughts on the U.S. defense? I think they've went too defensive too early, pretty consistently in the knockout rounds. It hasn't hurt them yet, but going to 5 in the back, I don't think this team looks the same.
No, and for me, I think that they're taking too much sort of emphasis on the defense too early. At the end of the day, is there a better way than defending than going another goal up? I don't think so. Against England, there was only one goal in it, and they already started to make defensive substitutions with plenty of time on the clock. And had England capitalized on that penalty and taken the game to extra time, or had their goal not been offside, then you sort of wonder, have these substitutions happened too early for us then to have a positive impact going forward? We also saw the issue of going 5 at the back is that you then lose your midfield. And if you play against a team with a strong central midfielder or a strong sort of midfield setting, you then get overboarded in the midfield and can never win a ball in the midfield, which means you're really just parking the bus and sort of clearing your back line, looking for long balls forward for your attackers to run onto. I think the US has grown defensively in the tournament. I'll say that. I think Dunn has done an impeccable job, and I hope she continues to do so, because I think she's a very likable character that works extraordinarily hard and has had a lot of criticism, which isn't really through fault of her own, considering she's playing out of position. But I do worry about the US at times, particularly with defending crosses and aerial balls. Nair's really grown in the tournament. I said that she really was the difference in the England game, and she deserves all credit for that. But at the end of the day, with goalkeeping, it's all about consistency, and you wonder, has she got that consistency in her against a team like the Netherlands, who has a large attacking presence?
This Netherlands team is pretty fascinating. I mean, it was their first World Cup in Canada 4 years ago, and they got out of the group stage and got to the round of 16. Then they turn around and win the Euros in 2017 unexpectedly, and now they've gotten all the way to a final. This feels like, when we talk about that progress for the women's game, this is exactly what I think everyone wants to see. A new face challenging in the final, and I think a fearless one. Like, I don't see them going full Sweden and turning defensive in the final. It would seem to go against them.
Yeah, they've got nothing to lose. When you're an underdog like the Netherlands, we said every article I've read about the Netherlands was kind of hoping that they would make it to the quarterfinals, and that would be an achievement for them. Well, they've gone 2 up on that, and they've made it to a final, and they have nothing to lose. They're the underdog, and that's an exciting place for them to be, but they've also had some battles. Sweden was a real battle for them. They had a tough game, and they overcome it, and they did well in extra time. They had a goalkeeper that made a couple of cracking saves, which will bring them a lot of confidence. And they've sort of grown throughout the tournament, and they've never given up. That's the biggest thing. They've done a lot in those last 10 minutes of the game, which is extremely important. If they can, let's just say they hold it out to a 1-0 goal deficit, you know that they're going to be giving everything in those last 10 minutes, and they have goals in them. So the biggest thing, I think, for the US, if they're going to win this game, is not getting comfortable and not really shutting down too soon, because they're going to need to be ready to respond should the Netherlands catch a goal and get back into the game.
So for the US, what do you think they have to do to end up as the champions?
I think they need to score early again. That was the biggest dent. Speaking from an English perspective, the worst thing that we could have done was concede early, and that's what we did, because you're always chasing uphill then. And I would say that Netherlands is a bigger underdog in this game than England is. So mentally for them, Netherlands need to hold on for as long as possible. So if the US gets a goal early, I think those heads will drop. I'm sure that there's going to be a big Dutch presence in the crowd. Their fans have been incredible to watch. I know there'll be a big US following too, but if the US can silence those Dutch fans early on with a quick goal or even 2 goals, I think it's game over from there. It'll be a hard one for the Dutch to get back into if they go two goals down. with that said, on the flip side, if the Dutch can hang in into the game for as long as possible, I think the US will get frustrated with the game. And the biggest thing the Dutch could do to really stand a chance is score first, because that'll be new territory for the US. And I'd be interested to see how they respond to going down instead of always getting that early goal.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued by that. I think against maybe France, maybe England as well, there could have been a different feeling from the U.S. if that happened. I don't think they really fear the Dutch here. I don't think the Dutch necessarily fear the United States either. I think the Dutch are beyond the happy to be here moment, but they're going to play their game. The U.S., I think, come in very confident, as they should, and if they don't score early, it would be a different challenge for them in this tournament. And what I wonder about is the Dutch, their strength is their attack. The U.S., their strength, I think, is their attack. Does either team try to alter who they are because they worry about the other team's attack? Or is it just going to be a shootout?
I really hope not, because, again, I would consider myself somewhat a neutral. Obviously, living in the U.S., you have some favoritism there, but I think if it was an open game, that would be the most exciting of a World Cup final. The worst thing we want is a sort of boring game that's just not got really any electric fireworks. After what we've seen of the semi-final games, we really want a big final to be the climax of this tournament. So I'm hoping neither team really changes who they are, because at the end of the day, you should play to your strengths rather than always focusing on the opposition. And I think both teams have enough defense that they don't need to focus on it too much. We saw some great defensive performances from both teams and great goalkeeping performances from both teams in the semi-finals. So I think there's goals in it as long as they play and focus on what they're good at. But I think it would be a mistake from both the Dutch or the US to change their style of play in this last game of the tournament when it's got them this far.
They've announced the referee for the final as well, and a referee that we thought might be getting this game, Pierres from Uruguay. She's going to be the fourth official. It's from the host nation. Stephanie Frappart is the referee. She is the first female referee in Ligue 1 in France. She was promoted to the highest refereeing group in France for the upcoming season. She had 2 matches last season in the men's Ligue 1. Makes sense. You know, it happens from time to time. You kind of reward the host nation in a lot of ways, and I think a lot of the speculation was maybe the other way around, that Pierres would be in the middle and Frappart would be the fourth official. Both ways, I think you're dealing with the same type of referee, somebody who isn't going to be, you know, overawed by the occasion. And I think the two types of teams really make this, in some ways, an easier game to referee, because you're not going to have a lot of contention. You're not going to have a lot of late challenges. You're not going to have a lot of cheap shots and dissent. You are going to have a very fast-paced game, and there could be some very big decisions to make because of that.
Yeah, and I think they're not going to be overwhelmed by the occasion, which is the biggest thing you've made. Obviously, without sort of undermining the ability of female soccer to know they've refereed in the male league in a very competitive league is a good sign to be able to cope with the talent and the speed of the game that we're going to see out there at the end of the day. And I'm excited that we've got a competent referee out there. I think the Uruguayan maybe deserved it a little bit more, but we've got some hometown decisions, and that's understandable. And what I hope for is that it isn't yet again another game that's dominated by referee decisions or VAR in the after talk, because that was something that disappointed me about the semi-final. It was a great game. Yes, there were some referee decisions, but at the end of the day, it was a great battle on the field, and I think that deserved more of the talk than everything afterwards in the media taboo.
Yeah, and that was very frustrating to me because, honestly, I mean, you know, the decisions were difficult ones, but the offside is offside. It is. And the penalty, I think they got it right, and I think they used VAR correctly. It took a little while because I think it did take that one angle that we didn't see initially. And I don't know how much the TV replays they were getting were similar in terms of timing as the assistant VAR crew and all of that, because watching it, I didn't think it was a penalty until they showed the angle from like midfield where you could see the contact from behind. I think as a whole, in the group stage, yes, we had a lot of talk about VAR. We had a lot of questions. We had a lot of stuff with penalties and goalkeepers coming off lines on penalties. Knockout rounds have been pretty good. And I think the referee conversation's been a lot quieter.
And maybe it's because as we've got into these knockout stages, the pool of referees has got smaller, with us getting the best quality of the referees that potentially have more of a understanding or comfort with the VAR system and more control over their game. I'd like to praise the referees. I think it's been a decent tournament, and there hasn't been really many glaring errors based on the referees out there. And you know what, it's fun, and we just want to focus, like I say, on the football that's being played, because it's real quality. And I'm just hoping that, like we say, the final is an exciting one. I know you said that you wouldn't mind it being 4-2 earlier, and I mean, I just want goals. That's the best thing to see. And what a watch party it's going to be for everyone based in Atlanta that's going to go into the Benz and watch that game, because I know it was fun for the World Cup, but I think with USA playing in it, it's going to be even different than the Men's World Cup this year.
Yeah, it'll be very, very different. I think it'll be a big crowd at Mercedes-Benz Stadium to watch. There'll be a big crowd at the other public viewing parties that will be all over the country. I know Kansas City has always had a big one in their downtown area. New York has one in Times Square. There's going to be a lot of cool images from the United States about this, but I think there will also be the same in the Netherlands. And it's kind of cool that you get the two teams that have had, outside of the host nation, maybe the biggest fan,
absolutely,
reaction in this tournament.
Yeah. When you look at the videos of the Oranges, the Netherlands have been incredible in terms of their fan base. They've been loud, they've been proud, they've been, eccentric in their dress and their songs and their dances. But that's a brilliant thing, and this atmosphere is going to be incredible. I'm sure people have spent a great deal of money on tickets. I'm sure a lot of French fans probably bought their tickets early thinking France would be there. I know if I was French, I probably would have. And it's fun and it's unpredictable. And like you say, we never really thought the Netherlands would be here, honestly. Maybe we sort of didn't give them enough credit, but they were going to face a German side that we thought was going to win that side of the bracket, and they didn't. And I think the Netherlands is going to have a real voice in that stadium, and the 12th man may come into play. I'm sure there's a lot of American outlaws traveling, but it's a lot shorter of a journey for the Dutch, that's for sure.
Yeah, you could have a lot of last-minute tickets picked up by Dutch fans making the trip over. It's going to be a blast to watch. I think it will be a fun game. I would bet the over on it. I think we're looking at a 3-2, 4-2, 3-1 kind of game. I do hope it is a good one, and I hope that we're talking about the soccer and the action on the field as opposed to anything else when we get back together to recap everything. We will have our final World Cup date on Tuesday to recap everything from the final, from the legacy of the tournament. We'll talk about who won the awards and what we think about that. We'll talk about the best 11, and we'll talk about kind of what's next, because I think there's a lot of new fans of the women's game that need to know that, hey, you can watch these players week in and week out, whether it's NWSL, whether it's the Women's Super League or La Liga or Serie A. There are places to watch, and we'll let you know how to keep up with your favorite new players after the World Cup is over. Two more matches, one more big one on the final. I don't want to gloss over the third place game, but it's...
No, I don't want to think it. Jason, the third place game is like the worst loser. It's a horrible, it's a horrible game, and I don't know. I'm impressed with how motivated the English camp seems to be. I've been following them on social media, and they seem to be dealing with it well. But I know for me, if I was a player, that's a real hard one to play in, and you want to obviously pick up that bronze medal. But who hangs the bronze medal in their trophy cabinet? I'm not sure I do.
Yeah, I don't think so. So 1.5 games left, and we'll come back to recap everything on Tuesday. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Let us know your predictions for the World Cup final, the Golden Ball, the Golden Boot, all those sorts of things. Tweet at us at Jessica ATLUTD, at Longshoe, at Soccer Down Here, and we'll be back on Tuesday to recap everything from the final of the Women's World Cup.